2, 1, boost ignition, and liftoff, and all systems are go.
Welcome to the Lesbo and the Bean universe. Lesbo and the Bean. LaTB, LaTB, where mixed martial arts and the UFC get silly. Big silly. Buckle up and move your tray tables to their upright position. And please, somebody shut that baby up. It's time for Lesbo and the Bean.
Welcome back. Episode 104, getting underway. Fun fight night out of Chile. We had upsets starting off the fight card. Things kind of panned out in the end. It was a fun fight card. I think I ended up rating it a B overall. What was yours, Lesbo? How did your fight night end up going out?
I think a B is a good score for that. Yeah, I think with part of the score should also include the amount of hype that was on the card to go into it, and if it lived up. And because there was zero hype on this card, it surpassed what everyone's expectations were. So B is a good score.
With the rating, though, I do feel like the main events have a big factor to do with the card. They're not the all and all, but it has a big factor, and it was a very, very somber main event that we had there. The fans kind of were like, okay, but that's a Damian Maia fight and Usman fight, and they fought each other, so should have seen the decision coming out of there right away. But
yeah, you know what I think it is? It's kind of the double-edged sword of everybody thinks they want a quick finish until now after the knockout or submission in 2 minutes into round one, now you have 13 minutes of filler, 2 minutes of UFC commercials, other commercial. It's like, oh, maybe I don't mind decisions here and there if they're filled with
if they're actually fun decisions, which the fight of the night honors ended up going to who was it? Angela Lee versus Veronica Macedo in a 3-round decision. That was fight of the night.
Let me think if I think that is the fight of the night.
And performance of the night ended up going to Puelles and Benitez. Starting off with Puelles, I think up from the bottom to the top is a good way to get there. And we had a one-sided ass beating where I saw a fighter could have been stopped 3 times. Once in the second, 2 times in the third before Puelles came out and knee barred Eric Felipe Silva, he ended up winning that entire fight. Puelles looked very overwhelmed in the striking, and then on the ground, Silva stayed away from the ground game so much that it was just 8 rounds. 2 out of those rounds easy until the last minute where, with Rocky Pennington, this is exactly why in that second round, the corner could have stopped that fight, and I would have been okay with that and been like, all right, he's a young kid, let him come back. He learned a lot from that. But they went out there, got him to the ground, even though the corner said to Puelles in the beginning of the third, don't go to the ground, you got to finish him standing, you're losing. And even the announcers were like, whoa, that's a little harsh. And Puelles comes out with a knee bar submission. What do you do with Silva? What do you do with Puelles here? Because he looked horrible up until that point.
In my opinion, I like both guys going forward, and I actually wrote this down because I thought it was, I'm like, I'm not going to remember this. I'll just remember the outcome of this fight. Uh-huh. And I like Puelles' Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game more and smoother than some of the recent newcomers I see come into the UFC that are being hyped. The fact, the amount of damage he took, lets me know that he's tough. And I also respect Silva's stand-up so much. The fact that he could stand with Silva at all and get in punches, on the other hand, I think he's a sneaky play. Everyone's going to remember that he had that, but a lot of other guys wouldn't have been as smart to dictate. I mean, he went with every submission from the waist, and he lost it and went for the leg, and he lost the leg and he went for the knee. He lost the knee, he went for the heel, he lost the heel, he went for the toe, and then he was up again. He didn't just give up on the one submission. He really kept attempting it, and I liked that he was doing that. I thought he had okay punches. He had zero cardio. That was his kind of downfall. And we always notice that the guys, when they're first coming in, they think they have good cardio until they get to the UFC.
Right.
And we do see it get better. We have other guys we'll talk about later tonight that we've seen now that it's their third round time out. Oh, look at them 3 round in. Look at them. They have fresh feet still, and we used to be watching them crazy. So I just thought he was really smooth, and I like both guys going forward. I think they're both fun guys in the division.
I would agree with that. I don't think Silva goes anywhere. He's now has 2 losses in a row, but for Felipe Silva, this is one of those showings where you're like, okay, he can beat a lot of other guys in there, and this was kind of a fluky situation, but the minus 300 odds were off. If you listen to LaTB at all for the breakdown, you knew to stay away from this fight because crazy shit was going to happen, and crazy shit happened. Felipe, though, ended up still scoring 53 points to the 63 for Puelles. Again, the 7,000 price tag for Puelles really came through for your DraftKings, though, on that.
I don't know how I had it. I survived the night with under 50% correct on my Tapology. But I survived the night on my DraftKings. I just picked the right ones, but I think everybody had a shitter.
Everybody had a shitter one way or another.
It was a weird night of fights. A fun night of fights, but just...
It was. That was a dramatic 3-rounders. I do think Puelles also broke his orbital socket. Into that 3rd round, his face was so swollen.
Oh, the other thing I would like to say, earliest fight card I've ever seen with the fullest arena that I've ever seen.
I did like the fans. The fans
They were
in Chile
educated.
were educated. They did like the local favorites or the Latinos in general, but of course.
And they weren't allowing the latter in the night, or there was 2 referees in particular that they were allowing the fans' boos to dictate the separation of the grappling.
I did see that with a few refs, so we were talking about that, and it did happen. Need to get better refs in there. Need to get better judges. Even though the judging throughout the night I thought was fairly spot on.
I did too. They agreed with us most of the time. One other thing, we're doing on Twitter, so you can follow us there if you're not already. We're trying to put out scorecards. If we have somebody that is a nerd about fights like we are, we'll allow them to be the 3rd judge on our card. And if we're not, it'll just
It's
be
a rotating
Lesbo
chair?
Bean. Yeah, it's a rotating chair, but otherwise it'll just be Lesbo Bird and the Bean. And we'll just do scorecards, and we'll release it as the fight goes on. It's hard to get them out sometimes before the decision's actually called, but we're not writing them afterward. We're doing them after each round the same way the judges would, and inputting them so you can follow on Twitter and see the pictures of that go up. And you can hashtag it LATB scorecard if you want to make your own. So that's LATB scorecard. Anyway.
We move on to a decision. Frankie Saenz, being the heavy decided favorite over Briones, looked like in the later rounds he was definitely pouring it on much, much more. Frankie Saenz was getting hit with a lot of shots, but they just had no power from Briones. Gonna be looking to fade both of these fighters after this. Nothing really stuck out to me other than just how old both of these 37-year-olds looked. Against each other, perfect matchup, but I think it's tough sailings for either fighter.
I actually liked Frankie Saenz a little bit in this fight. He looked better than he has to me in previous outings. The one thing I didn't... Well, you could tell the first round, he was tentative about his own chin. He took a couple hard shots, or at least felt the guy's power out, saw that he was standing up okay to it, and then you saw his confidence build as the fight went on. Yeah. But I felt like the same nerves we had about his chin, he had about his own. You could almost see it in there.
Sure.
He has some fights left in him. I don't even remember Briones. Ugh.
I think it's done skis for Briones.
Yep. Fade City. Saints' name's a little bigger. You get the juice is worth the squeeze still with Frankie, I think.
Yeah, you can build. He's a stepping stone more of a situation right now, unfortunately for him at this point in his career.
And another thing I was thinking about it when we were watching, and in his fight in particular, and I just wanted to say it as a blanket statement to all fighters and shit we say. We respect the shit out of every fighter that steps in there. We love every fighter in the octagon. And if we ever seem harsh, or we're doing it for entertainment and we're never...
Trying to be malicious. We love all of them. Sure.
And if we say it's time for them to get out of here, we're usually saying it because we want their brain to be safe, not because we don't enjoy the entertainment they've given us.
And they just can't compete at that high level. Not saying that they wouldn't beat the living daylights out of either one of us.
Or be in other fight organizations that they still might have a chance to compete. But we're just talking about their organization specific.
And they're not going to be running to the championship because
Yeah,
it's an always upward treadmill.
Yes.
That we're going towards a champion.
All right.
So the next fight we had Enrique Barzola versus Brandon Davis. This was a 3-round decision. The Bean, I think, called this 100% all the way around with Barzola striking being much better than it ever was. And now those takedowns is transitioning perfectly with it. And Brandon Davis just got overwhelmed. He just never really was in the fight. Landed a couple good shots. Loved Davis's heart. He can beat other guys in there, but Barzola's on the next level. And I think the biggest part that I loved of the fight more than anything was nobody's calling out Zabit, but Barzola. And I love that fight. I think it's a right call out. Let's do it.
I think it's a great call out, a great fight for both guys. I like both guys' trajectory. You were spot on pretty much to the T, almost like you were Mystic Macking this fight. And I felt like I switched over on air, which would have put me over 50%, but maybe I switched back to Davis. I don't remember. I'll have to listen back.
Right.
But Davis wasn't finished. He just didn't really lay out anything to make himself work.
That grappling top position, it just neutralized
Or was
Davis.
he finished?
He wasn't finished.
He wasn't. He was
Nope, it was a decision.
A beautiful decision by Barzola. Very exciting decision.
Good takedowns.
Yeah, amazing.
Slams. Good controls.
Explosive.
Yep. And good punches in there. I
I
really like his
stand-up.
involved striking. It's really come along.
I thought Brandon Davis was going to excel more on the stand-up than he looked, and it looks like Barzola is taking those strides to be in that top 10. I like it. I like what I'm seeing.
So, with both guys.
Peruvian Prince, that's what I would name him.
I think there's money to be made on...
Or Peruvian Dan Henderson. Doesn't he look like Dan Henderson? Am I crazy?
The body type, is it? Is it the way he's shaped?
a little bit. I don't know if he's been punched in the nose enough that he has that like soft nose look.
I could see he's a Latino Dan Henderson.
Yeah, Peruvian Dan Henderson.
Peruvian Dan Henderson. But either of these fighters, I'm going to be looking to make money on. Brandon Davis still. Barzola is on a higher trajectory than most people because of his style, where Brandon Davis can beat a lot of those top 25 guys in the UFC, or be at that range, barely teeter-totter.
I did like that he came out a little hungrier in the third. Like he was willing to put it on the line to win it, put himself in some dangerous. Yeah, I like his style still. Both guys are entertaining to me still.
So, on to the flyweights, 145-pound division. We had Gabriel Benitez being a heavy favorite throughout the night, defeating Gilberto Banani in 39 seconds.
Wow.
So this was breakdown because you elegantly broke it down for me when I was transitioning over to watch the fight, and it was like, I showed up and it was like, oh, that fight's over.
You already missed it. So, now I don't remember any of it. And I know I told it to you word for word of it.
So I feel like I can paraphrase it pretty quickly.
Yeah,
it ended up being a straight punch that ended up knocking down Banani. Then Benitez, or no, it was a body kick, took him down. Then Benitez it was a leg kick.
See, I totally
It was
forgot.
a leg kick. Then Benitez went down to the ground. He went for an armbar. And then in that armbar transition, Benitez picked him up and slammed him on the side of his head. Didn't spike him, which is illegal. Ended up slamming him on the side of his head and then landed a hammer fist to just finish out the night. But you saw that
the slam knocked him out.
Stunned him. This was the performance of the night via the UFC because it was a dramatic finish. He was
dramatic.
Out. It was.
I was so wrong about this fight. I'm so glad I didn't put Bandonnet everywhere. But it's so hard. We were talking about it afterward. You like both. You don't know how to feel about either guy when something like this dramatic happens so quickly. It happened so many times later in the night too. It's like, oh no, what do we do with either of these fighters now going forward? Because this was so quick. Fun fight.
Benitez is going to be a little more hyped than I think he should be because Banani might not be there. Or Bandonnet may not be that next level yet.
You just have zero. You give zero fucks about Bandonini.
Bandonnet. I don't know. It was so short of a fight. It's going to be tentative who he fights next. we got a contender with Benitez at 145.
I like him.
We got a contender.
I like you, but everybody else is going to see it too going forward.
Moving on to another quick finish. This was definitely via body strike. This was the Leslie Smith underdog 2 weeks in a row, not coming through.
Did we pick a Leslie Smith underdog? We did not.
I thought we both consecutively had Kondo, did we not?
Oh.
I thought it was her.
I didn't know. I thought we didn't have one this week. I thought we both had her, but we never picked a
We never officially broke it down.
Yeah, I thought we never gave her the label. But maybe we did.
We didn't
Maybe
retweet
I'm
it?
not remembering it like a horrible event that happened. Like, I don't want to remember.
Because this was also a 33-second fight. Like, this was a body kick to Kondo turning over and then 2 punches.
Her liver exploded.
Botello is huge at 115 pounds.
Agreed. She looked like a 125er.
She was easily a big 125er. Like, she's got length on her. That body shot. When I think of it, Kondo looked big in her last fight against a 115er that should have been a 105er. And now I'm like, oh.
I
so
thought
she's
Kondo's
tiny.
body looked entirely different this
I
time.
liked Kondo, but I didn't see anything. I mean, where do you go from this? Like,
I just talked about her
Kondo.
body. And then you never know, too, once the body's... That's what... It's the same thing again. There wasn't enough punches thrown for me to know what to do with either woman going forward.
It's tough. I mean, you're going to put more money on Botello now that she has a couple finishes in the UFC. She's going to be more hyped up and look invincible, but somebody with her size
Do
and
Botello
striking-
Suarez next?
No. Botello needs other higher fights. I think Suarez has had better competition. And
You mean
isn't
Sugar Shane Suarez?
Oh?
Are you talking about Zabit Suarez?
What?
That's my new hype train.
Oh, man.
That's my girl right there.
We got time. We got time.
And I'm so kind of excited because I'm like, oh, so, Planet Valentina will be up here somewhere when we retire her after she gets her belt.
Yep.
We might be having a little Suarez action.
Did you happen to catch any of the
What
Valentina Shevchenko commentary?
Not
or
one
anything?
word. I couldn't find it.
I retweeted a couple things that she did, but I didn't get to listen to the commentary either, which I really want to try to find somehow. I'm sure if I go to Latin America channels that I have to pay X amount of pesos to be a part of for a week or something.
Well, that'll be like 13 cents or something.
So, on to a rematch. We had Pantoja versus Moreno. This could have been fight of the night in my eyes as well, even though it was one-sided. Moreno was never out of it. He always has a shot, but Pantoja looked like in the striking, where I actually started to lean towards Moreno later on, thinking he made the bigger strides since they've last fought. Pantoja, in the wrestling, the striking, the power, was eating. The Cannibal was eating Moreno's shots and walking forward and landing more devastating shots. Think, was it in the first or second round that Moreno broke his nose with a jab off? Pantoja broke Moreno's nose with a jab?
I cannot believe how every single aspect of the game Pantoja looked like he rung up the next ladder of it. Whatever Moreno had trained for with the tapes that he had previously watched, there was a better version of every aspect of that for Pantoja. So I love Pantoja going forward.
Yep.
He puts his... All of a sudden, that's a real interesting fight against Cejudo. I wish Cejudo was not fighting Mighty Mouse again. I'm not ready for that.
Agreed.
Even though, do you think it's funny that he's playing the heel?
I do think it's an unusual turn because it's one of the only ways that he can get back in the limelight.
Am I even talking about the right weight division? I usually do that wrong.
Yeah, no, they're right.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I love Pantoja going forward here. What about Pantoja Sugar Shane?
How much longer does Sugar Shane have to wait for his foot? But I would like that fight. That's an interesting fight. But even the reason it's not is because later on in both of their careers is an even better matchup when they're fighting for the number one spot.
But isn't it kind of exciting too? This is the kind of thing that now we're noticing is it might even be more interesting. They get that fight out of the way, even though it hurts when we watch two of our favorites meet.
We'll see it again.
Yeah, the option of getting to see the rematch and then the trilogy with them, like, remember when we first watched them when they came into, like, I'm just getting those moments that you're used to.
Does Moreno get a third try? Usually when it's 2 and done, it's like, no, that guy's got your number.
In my opinion, it's time for Brandon Moreno to change camps. He looks stunted to me. His last 2 outings have just looked like he just hasn't pulled the trigger, or he can't put the game plan enough to correct, like he doesn't have the ring IQ while he's in there or something, or he allows himself to get his bell rung way too early, and then he goes right back to...
He's known to be more of the brawler that wins those scrambles. I think we were profiling that a bit as well. Like, Moreno is the wild one in there who relies on the flash shot.
Team. He needs a camp with super structure.
I think he's been going to Cali for a little while now, but I think I couldn't tell you exactly where off the top of my head.
He needs a super structure team, or even the Jackson Wink. He needs a team with super structure. He needs a team that's already been doing this for 15 years. He needs that kind of discipline, and I almost feel like you can see it in his body. Speaking of bodies, later on, we'll get into it. Zach Cummings.
Later on, how's about right now? We had a 170-pound match with our heavy favorite, Michel Pereira's a big underdog against Zach Cummings being the heavy favorite. 3-round decision. Pereira's I usually bet on every time, but I thought this weight issue was going to matter, and that strength still transfers over, or is Zach Cummings looking every bit of his age? Talking about the body.
I don't know, and the more I start thinking about it, the more I was looking at... I could not let it go for most of the fight of what his body looked like to me compared to previous outings. And the more I know about this sport, and the more I know about male hormones and TRT and those sort of things, if you take too many of them in your youth, then your body stops producing it in your adult. In my opinion, Zach Cummings' body looked a little womanly. Like it had a little too much estrogen in it. He was holding weight in his love handles, and just un-Zach Cummings-like. He looked like he should... Sometimes you see the guys at 205 and heavier have that kind of build.
Which he's fought at 205, Zach Cummings.
Yeah, it does not... It didn't look right. It didn't look right in my opinion. He looked like a different Zach Cummings body out there, and... He never could get out of the gate. Pantoja.
Trapdoor.
Just shut him down.
Which he does to everybody. But this is the thing that I'm just like, and I remember saying last night, Praceres did this to Zach Cummings, showed that his strength took over. Imagine Praceres not making weight at 155 and fighting 55ers that did make weight. Like how the discrepancy of strength that those guys had against him. Fucking monster. Praceres is a hard fight for anybody.
I'm loving Praceres in this division though. All of a sudden.
I agree. He's a Kevin Gastelum all of a sudden of the 170s he's a tough fight for anybody, but he makes a boring fight. When Praceres landed on you, he could have moved to position, but was willing to just hold on and just suck the energy out of you. He looked every bit of 170 filled out. Like he didn't look fat and flabby where we're saying that with Cummings. He looked hard body.
Yeah.
Unreal.
I like him going forward, and I'm actually...
What do you do with Cummings?
I think it's... Zach Cummings is Matt Brown in that Matt Brown phase to me, where it's like, okay, homie, like, if you want to fight, it's on you. If you want somebody else to take your name and take it the rest of the way, I think he's a permanent gatekeeper at this point, and now all of a sudden you're interested, like, what's Prazeres going to do at 170?
I am. I'm interested. There could be money made on there because he may be a underdog to a lot of people, but it looks like he's going to kind of do the same thing that he was doing at 155, and it's never been the most dominant and flashy style, but it's always got the dominant.
He's 52. Yeah, so it's not an age thing.
He knows how to make grueling fights. It's one of those things, people look shitty against him, and it's him making people look shitty. On to, though, a quick one. In the first round, we had your boyfriend, Vicente Luque, knocking out your other boyfriend, Chad Laprise, in a nasty little finish at the end of the 4-minute mark, or beginning of the 4-minute mark, 4:16 for Luque. I actually like Laprice's striking. He looked much more evolved, but again, he was pillow-fisted at 155 pounds, and that power still just doesn't look like it translates over. He kills you by 1,000 cuts, and it wasn't able to get there. Luque knocked him out on his feet. His head bounced off of the canvas, and then Luque landed another 3 more. The ref was like, oh, you don't look dead enough there, Laprise. Let me land 3 more extra shots. Oh, okay, it's over. I thought it could have been over a bit quicker.
Yeah.
But
he could have called it in the air.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as he hit, like, all right, step off. Luque could have walk-off home runned it, and it would have been a KO.
What I understand is part of the ESPN deal is also the 160-pound division or 165.
Really? I didn't hear this.
Yeah, apparently it's, and I could be wrong, I'm sure the fans will correct us if I am, a 105 women's division.
Atom weight.
And a 160 or 165 men's division.
Love it.
Well, also, I only want to see LaPrice fight again if this division's there.
165 would be perfect for LaPrice.
I like him. I like all his skill set. I do think he's evolved a little bit in his game. I like his stand-up. I do think he's a game plan together, cut you by 1,000 strikes guy, or beat you by 1,000 cuts guy, but I don't like him at 170. He's not big enough, and 155 seems to deplete him too much. So we need the cowboy division is what I'd like to call it.
So, where do you go with LaPrice if there's not that division, if he's still fighting at 170 pounds?
He doesn't, in my opinion, there's really not anything for him at 170. And Luque, you give him Braceras.
Ooh, I would love that fight.
Even though that might be Luque fighting backward, I just don't think Luque and Usman are too good of friends to get them right there.
Yeah, and Luque still has a couple fights because he's lost.
Yeah,
few.
You're right.
So he still's got a few to go. But I agree, Luque is definitely a trajectory up. But we do have to be a bit careful.
We have our scorecard
for the main card. We can get right into the main card.
It was our very first one we ever did, and it was KO round 1.
So we didn't really get to break it down, but that KO for Luque, I think it's going to really hype him up to next level. And I'm really a big fan of his, but I also got to remember to back off a little bit because LaPrice is a small, no-power 170er as well.
That is true. That is true.
It's going to be hyped up way too much, and he's going to be more expensive than he really should be. On to, though, the next one that we do get a breakdown. On our second card ever, we had Angela Lee with Veronica Macedo in the fight of the night, 3-rounder. This, I think, is a contender for fight of the night. It's a toss-up who could have really won, but Lee showed her striking. Macedo landed actually a few shots that rocked Lee. I remember Lee being the more wobbled of the two fighters, even though Macedo went down a few times. It was Lee's grappling that got her there and then was able to just kind of hold top position more than anything. But Macedo, dogfighter, love everything I saw in Macedo in that loss.
Agree.
Love it, 100%.
I like both
Same with
going
Lee.
forward.
Agreed. At 125.
Macedo's sneaky AF.
I agree.
There's going to be some opportunity where she's going to submit so many other women.
At 22 years old, she's got a lot of room to grow. And with Macedo's tenacity that you saw in there, I was really misled because the whole workups and every stare down I saw, she was always frumpy and just kind of like, whatever. And when that bell rung, Macedo got to it. Angela Lee was in a dogfight of a fight, like both women, as we were saying, going forward.
I loved everything I saw from KGB Lee. It was the best time I ever... They were great dancing partners. They really brought out the best in each other that we got to see the whole... Yeah, it was the fight of the night. You really got to see, even though we 10-9'd both of us the entire way through for KGB Lee.
She won every round. It wasn't one-sided.
It wasn't one. Every round was close until the end. Every round
the
could have
takedowns
gone.
really helped.
There was a couple times where like it's going to Moreno this round, and then KGB Lee would do something smart by the last minute that we'd be like, oh, she just won it with that takedown.
Yep.
She just won it with that.
She just won it in the last. But that's fight IQ, and that's why you're going to move forward. And Macedo hopefully learns a lot from that next go around. Happy to see both of these women in the UFC. Moving on to a controversial split decision win for Guido Canetti versus Diego Rivas in a 3-round decision. It wasn't a split?
Oh, I don't know if it was. We were split.
We were split.
But I don't
Oh, I'm talking about now that we have these cards, this trumps any judging officially by any regulation.
Because we're going to do our own rankings too, and you know they will be better than the UFC official rankings.
But Canetti ended up winning on most cards, at least 2 of those rounds to Rivas's 1. And I'd say Canetti, if anything, had the first and third, even though I gave potentially the first to Rivas. Did I give the first to Rivas?
You gave the first and third to Rivas,
yep.
and I gave the first and second to Canetti.
And
I
I
only
feel
gave
like
the
that's
last
right.
to Rivas. I gave the third to Rivas.
And that's the first is the controversial round, and I do think that actually Canetti got the takedown, the only takedown in that round when I looked back at it. But I was trying to look at it in Chilean judges' eyes that time around.
That's where
I
you
think
went
so.
wrong. You're not a Chilean judge.
Very good point, and I must learn from my mistakes.
Yep, there it
We're
is.
getting there.
So I, just thinking like myself, actually did think like a Chilean judge, and I picked Canetti for
The
the win on
proper
it.
guy
I didn't
to
really
win.
pick him, and this is just on these cards with what we saw happen. So when it gets to the controversial thing when we're all arguing at the end of the night, it's like, well, you said round 1 and you won a 10-9. Oh shit, I forgot that. This is why it's there. It's to hold us accountable to the bullshit we're saying when we're drinking B's, S&B's.
So where do we go with Canetti and Rivas? I think if Rivas can't get through Canetti, Canetti can't get through many other guys, and it's going to be a double fade, double fade for these fighters. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's their camps. I think Canetti's more his age and time in just life, where Rivas has just kind of not reached that potential.
Both guys made for an exciting fight to me, so I welcome to watch them both again in the future on my prelims or my fight pass.
On to the co-main event. We had Tatiana Suarez defeating
Wait, was that next?
Alex Grasso in the
Yeah.
co-main event. First rounder. This was a rear naked choke, also known as a Mata Leon in Spanish. And this was just the takedown defense wasn't there for Grasso. She fought off one takedown, but the chain wrestling of Suarez is just that next level. I think Lesbo has a little bit to say about Tatiana Suarez. Please.
I love her. I actually, after watching everything, I ended up right after we got off air switching to her, and then I never went back. I had been watching, I remember this woman from a few months back, and I was like, when I see her face again, I am going to put her on everything from this point forward. She's the most dangerous prospect in the women's 115. Sugar Shane Suarez, Zabit Suarez, Ngannou Suarez, Ozdemir Suarez. I think she is the most dangerous one to watch going forward. I love her whole game. So once I saw her face, I was like, oh, yes. And so I switched her immediately after we got off air. And she did leaps and bounds better than I even thought she was going to do. Grasso couldn't even...
I do think that Evil Twin's nefarious information did live up to all of its expectation, with Evil Twin being obviously evil. And he was definitely trying to strain me a lot.
He was high on Grasso.
High on Grasso.
He was smoking too much Grasso.
Living in that Oregon State with all that green mist in the air. But where do we go with Grasso with this? Because I think Grasso beats other women, but Suarez is a very high trajectory, as you were just stating.
Grasso's still an elite in her field. She's still elite at that. Her body looked better than it ever has.
I agree.
She's still young enough. I still love Grasso going forward, and I love her in this division. It's a shame it was finished so quickly, and it's a shame for Suarez it was finished so quickly. I mean,
Right.
she has the win on her record, but we didn't get to see any involvement of her game, which maybe is great for her next opponent. There's one less tape to watch.
So what I would say is I feel like Lesbo is a big proponent of this, but I think I'm going to have to chime in and say, it's time to move on, baby girl. It's time to go to America and go to a Team Oyama that has 5 of the best 10.
So that was the other thing I
125,
wanted to say I was
115
wrong
pounders.
about. I said Novoon Yao was Novoon out. Like I said, they were over.
Right.
Do you think maybe their last fade of fighters, maybe they just played their rung through, but now they have this new fresh phase that maybe Novoon Yao, maybe...
Who's the Nova União fighter? Was it Mercado?
Oh, I thought it was Suarez. She's
No,
not?
no. Suarez is coming out of the out of Jalisco, Mexico with Aldana. They're a little camp out of Mexico who
Okay, then
they
maybe
made
it was
their
the
name in
other
the
woman
women's
who
team.
fought. She
Yeah,
might have been
she's
Novoon
Novoon Yao. Yeah,
But Suarez,
Mercedo.
yeah, then I like what you're saying. It is time to get to the American camps.
Yep.
Like to take it to the next level if this is where you're at
For
now.
Grasso.
Oh, okay. Where's Suarez fighting out of?
She's fighting at, I think it's Team Oyama. I think Suarez is out of Team Oyama. Let me double check that real quick.
I thought she was Novoon Yao.
Nope, Suarez is fighting out of Linwood.
Da-da-da, I'll do a little singing break while we look for Tatiana Suarez. And if I want to see her in a next fight at 115, I think there's other fights for Grasso still, and I think it's time for Tatiana Suarez to fight Angela Hill.
I think that's a great card, and she's fighting out of Millennia MMA.
Think about a watch.
Where Suarez, who else is out of there? We have Joshua El Rey Alvarez, George Karakarnian, he's definitely Samid Awad, Lorenz Larkins.
You know what I'd like more than it?
Who's there?
If I think Suarez is so good that I would love for her to fight Fat Dern. I mean Mackenzie Dern.
I love that at 115, but
you know
Dern's not gonna take that fight. Dern ain't gonna take that fight. I guarantee you, Dern ain't gonna take that fight.
Yeah, I like Angela Hill. I think that's a good. Angela Hill's a well-rounded MMA fighter to try to put your name up against, and whether you win or lose that fight, you're going to come out of it a better fighter.
Yeah, I agree. So, moving on to the main event, we go to the 170-pound short notice fight for Damian Maia. This was...
Oh, wait, we didn't do Dominic Reyes versus Jared Cannonier.
Oh, where did I skip that one? I did skip that one between Rivas Kennedy.
I thought you did, but I didn't.
So, real quick, we had Reyes...
It happened so fast.
...defeating Cannonier in 2 minutes of the first round. Cannonier looked better than I'd ever seen him, honestly. I thought Cannonier was looking good, right.
He had that Grasso body. Physically, they look better than we'd ever seen them. And
True.
then they came out there and...
Well, I don't know. Reyes also put it on. Reyes looked like he has really great angles and really uses his slot size and length to its full potential, which is going to be dangerous for anybody in there with him. Cannonier just couldn't, even though he was throwing good combinations, couldn't get it going. And a few uppercuts. Some people are calling early stoppage on this. Evil Twin was saying early stoppage. I thought Cannonier ate an uppercut 3 shots before that last uppercut that knocked Cannonier off of his feet, and he got up, but it was going to be more of the same.
He looks just like Tyson Pedro, in my opinion. Or that they could be siblings.
Reyes?
Yeah. And some people are calling for that being the next fight.
That's a fun one. I would love to see that one.
Fighting for identity. Tyson Pedro versus Polo Reyes. What?
But with Reyes, we haven't seen the takedown guys go against him. Cannonier's a striker. Where we see Pedro is a ground guy. Like, that's a direct style matchup that's a really interesting fight.
That is interesting. They're right around the right rankings to maybe see it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good, fun one. But Reyes, somebody to definitely keep an eye on.
I think there's money to be made on Cannonier going forward. It's a shame.
I could agree with that. Even though he's a little bit older, we're so bummed about all these finishes. And then we sat like this for... Just waiting for 27 minutes.
What do we have to talk about? We didn't want to talk about too much because we want to save some of it for on air.
Exactly. But rightfully so, to the main event, we go. This was one-sided, 4 rounds, 2-1. I would say that Damian Maia earned that first round, ended up getting on Kamaru Usman's back and holding him in a position inferior, or Maia was in a dominant position for the most of the first round, and then from that point on, no takedowns ever came, and Kamaru Usman was forced to only fight at 30% because he had 2 broken hands. How do you feel that went down?
I think it was 65% in round 1, 70% in round 2. Round 3, he broke 1 hand, so then he was back down to 45%. Okay. Round 4, his heart kicked in, so he was back up to 66%.
Okay, I like that.
And also he broke his hand again, so he was down to 52%. So if I do my math...
Lesbo math.
It's about, I think he was at like 52, and we don't want to see it all right away. He was at 52.4% for the average of the fight. So has some in the tank still for your Woodleys and your, I can't believe we're even saying his name in the top, your Colbys.
Which he's got Dos Anjos ahead of him, and even Dos Anjos got for the loss is going to be. If he gets through
Dos Anjos, I'm corked up.
That's going to be a tough one for sure.
So Usman's getting a ton of hate. People do not like Kamaru Usman.
Because he has a very grinding style, and we were saying it in the 4th and 5th round. Please finish Maia. you need to finish Maia, because if you decision him like Colby, like, it doesn't look good. It's not going to look good for you. You have to try to get a finish. But when you find out that he has 2 broken hands, do you say, oh, I see why you didn't finish? Or what Evil Bean likes to say is, oh, I remember when Ryan Faber broke both of his hands. He was throwing elbows from every angle and trying to finish the fight. And I think Usman could have also done that. Not that it's easier said than done.
Well,
I'm
if
being
his
a
hands
dick.
are broken, I still want to find out if his hands are broken.
True, good point. Good point.
These wrestle-centric style guys, 100% of the time, whether it's Tyron Woodley, whether it's Usman, the only one who doesn't get hate is Khabib. All the other ones, even Ben Askren, even if they're wrestle-centric guys, they get tons of hate for being a boring fighter, except Khabib. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's the amount of takedowns. Or is there more to be said? If I get you down 20 times, that means you got up 20 times. If Woodley got you down 3 times, maybe he held you there for 9 minutes. Yeah, I don't know. I could be blind because of how much I like Kamaru Usman, and we kind of have a lot in the train of thinking he will be the next guy to wear the belt. I think he's awful on the mic afterwards. He's very unlikable. He doesn't say the right things. He needs to friggin' meet with someone and figure out what to say.
So, with this negative information that we're getting from him, how do you feel? I don't want to transition too hard into it and or change the topic too much, because he is getting all this hate, but for the first time ever, I've really seen the UFC get behind every one of these guys a little bit extra. We really saw the upbringing of Usman's native area. UFC sent a team out there, and they're doing everything to push it forward.
He has a good backstory, right?
Yeah.
You're intrigued. You're
Coming
like, oh
out of
my gosh,
Nigeria,
this isn't so
living
intense.
out of poverty. What does he do? What does Usman do? Does he have to just go heel and say, I don't give a shit? Because that's what Colby did. He made a boring style exciting by turning into the asshole. So did Chael Sonnen, though. He's the first one who ground everybody out and was like, oh, I'll talk. That's how I make my bucks. That's how I make it flashy. By just saying, Khabib too. Khabib, why is he flashy? Because he says, you give me this title. He's not finishing you. He's just saying, come on, Dana. Give me what? Yeah. He has to talk in order to make you interested in what he's doing in there. And it's the unfortunate part of grappling. But it's dominant.
I did not. It makes more sense if Kamaru Usman really did break his hands, because we talked about it from pretty quickly in round 2 that his punches were garbage. He didn't look like himself. They were wide looping punches. He was leaving his left side open every time to get pecked. Anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, like.
Thank you. And with that fight, real quick, Damian Maia was landing that left straight regularly.
That's the only
on
thing he
point,
landed.
But he landed it a lot. And somebody with power.
Enough.
And that was the thing by the end of the night. Even a tired Damian Maia could land that left, and a better striker. Look at those 5 rounds all day, because you can see the openings that Kamaru Usman shook some of those off like, you didn't hit me. But again, get a real striker in there and it's going to be a tough night as much as anything. But that's why it's MMA and the takedowns matter.
Yeah, we pretty much, this one you got right. I just gave a 10-8 to Usman in the 4th round because it was total dominance the entire time. He was on top of him the entire time. I don't know what kind of scorecards the UFC is playing with for 10-8s right now. They might only give it for an actual knockdown, but it was just total dominance. Yep. So I ended up with a 45-49 Usman score. You ended up with a 49-46 Usman. He just has a lot of hate online, and it kind of just bums me out a little because that same score, everyone would say, Khabib, so he wins all the rounds, and everyone still hates him.
So, I'm just trying to get to this 10-8, and I want to think specifically the reason you gave it a 10-8. Is it because Usman was being ultra creative and brought in a new strike to the MMA? And grabbing Damian Maia's foot and punching it.
I don't even know if that happened in the 4. They actually gave it to him because he, I would say at least probably 5 times in that round, Maia went for a takedown. He easily stuffed it, got tons of work done, got out of it, stood up and called him up again. And Maia down. slowly gets up. It happened so many times in that round that in my head, I'm like, oh, this other guy's toasted. He's toasted. There was too much dominance. Like, you have dominance from beginning to the end, and the other guy never showed a burp. I got a 10-8 that round. But I don't know what the new rules are. That's just Lesbo rules.
That's street rules. That's street rules. We play for blood. We play for blood. We
know.
play for blood, Lesbo rules.
So the odds is Usman waits for the winner of Colby Dos Anjos, which doesn't make sense because they're fighting for an interim belt to fight Woodley. Mm-hmm. So maybe he gets the loser of that fight.
Yeah, Usman's got to fight between there. But we got to see again that...
I like the loser.
Severity of those hands.
If Dos Anjos loses... Usman needs the name Dos Anjos to keep crawling. It can't just be Maia and those big names to hit Woodley. And if Colby loses, it's so crazy that Usman is essentially doing everything right, kind of like a Woodley to be kind of like a DC to be a fan favorite, but they're becoming this slow heel. And Colby's doing everything wrong and kind of garbage. But I think potentially the way UFC crazy fans work, they could be cheering for Colby to be Usman because of how much dislike Usman has in the community. Isn't that weird?
It is a crazy MMA verse we live in, and we have plenty more to come. We have another fight weekend right around the corner. We're going to be back Wednesday with another heavy-duty breakdown out of the UK. Darren Till headlining against Wonder Boy Thompson.
Bum, 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 bum. Too much to say about that.
Way too much to say, but thank you for the ride. You know where to follow us. You know where to get us. Anything left?
We love you.
Let's go to me.
Thanks for listening to LaTB. For all things Lesbo and the Bean, head over to lesboandthebean.com or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.